Well, good evening from not so sunny Scotland today, and very cold. It's about 4 degrees centigrade, which is just above freezing here. I know you've got a different system over there. I can't remember quite what it is, but anyway. It's temperature, but it's not as we know it this side of the Atlantic.
It's cooling down here, but it's still, pretty nice because it's Southern California.
Yeah, you've not got your air conditioning on.
No.
I hope not, because you've got a bloody big flag.
Actually, I want to go turn it on just so we can watch it billow, but anyway.
Yeah, and what is that flag behind you?
That is the Scottish, the flag of Scottish royalty, actually. Or at least that's what made me want it. The video I was watching was talking about that. But the interesting thing about it is that it's actually no longer owned by the Scottish people. That because when James the First and Sixth became king of Britain, then that it's like it transferred ownership over to the UK or the British or whatever. So it's interesting. Somebody was explaining how it's like technically not fully legal to fly this banner, and anyway, some, whatever. But then again, I watched a recent Glasgow march, like a unity march or, type thing. And I saw them just speckled throughout the crowds. So I knew there was a lot of people there that had them. So obviously they're not cracking down on that rule. So
no, it's called the Lion Rampant.
The Lion Rampant. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And you're right. The official sort of.
Let's let everybody have a look. There you go, folks.
No, hey, there's definitely no bald spot there, dude.
Nope.
There's definitely no bald spot. No.
Full head of hair. I may have this stuff going on here, but hey.
Yeah, the official Scotland flag is the little one that's hidden in the corner there.
Well, yeah, you can barely kind of see it over there.
It's called the Saltire.
The what? The Saltire?
Saltire, yes. And that combined with the flags of England and Wales makes up the Union Jack.
Oh, yeah, okay.
The red, white, and blue.
Yeah. And
the reason it's the shape that it is because of the flags. Anyway, it's nice to catch up with you. First question then. Well, for those of you that have tuned into Erekose's filming of it some point in the future, because he's a Time Lord.
Sorry, hold on a second. Hello, Sharon. Thank you for the flag, by the way. Just got YouTube open on my phone so I could manage comments here. Sorry, I don't have my 2 monitors going, folks. So I couldn't see what you were saying. Now I can. Sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
Yep. Okay. Question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Crunch Island is about 2,000 miles away from Wisconsin. I'm even further here in sunny Scotland.
I'll agree with you that maybe about 2,000 miles away from Wisconsin, but as to your second comment, anyways, go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying I'm about 3,600 miles away. It's.
I did say about, so I'll grant for 36. That's fine.
So you're questioning the fact that
I'm just questioning the direction in which
Crunch Island is that
from Wisconsin. I'm saying it's east. You're trying to imply it's west, and that's where we are butting heads here.
No. You
Need I remind you?
Geographically,
my client gave me this, from the Crunchberry Vineyards, and you can see how he is dressed, folks. They don't dress like that in California, folks.
Oh, They do. I've seen you in your kilt. So anyway, cutting to the chase. So I am 3,600 miles away. You're about 2,200 miles away. Why such interest in Wisconsin?
Well, I didn't really have much previously, but previous to 3.5, almost 4 years ago now. We're about 3 months shy of 4 years.
Yeah.
There's a couple things. I mean, let's first off start out with Brett Favre, Green Bay Packers. I mean, those names in the 90s, in the, late 80s, 90s, early 2000s, those things were huge. And now there's Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers, and they're still huge. But, I remember being a youngster, the era of Brett Favre and the Packers, and watching Brett Favre, tough as nails, gritting games out, on the field and stuff, and being very impressed, with that. And so that makes a name for Wisconsin. It gives you, you have an awareness of Wisconsin because of that. You know what I mean? Because they've won quite a few Super Bowls and that sort of thing. And they make the playoffs consistently. They're competitive pretty much year in and year out. So they're a football powerhouse. And so, like I said, your attention gets drawn to Wisconsin that way. For me also, I have a huge interest in true crime. Would I have gotten as interested in Wisconsin as I am now if I didn't have an interest in true crime? Probably not. But because I do have an interest in true crime, when Netflix came out with a documentary called Making a Murderer, I checked it out. Just like when they came out with one called The Staircase.
Yep.
I checked it out. Just like when they came out with one called Exhibit A.
Yep.
I checked it out. And many others. That's what I have an interest in. So that then drew my eyes to Wisconsin. Because after watching the documentary, Making a Murderer, I, at the time, immediately felt maybe that Stephen Avery did it, but I'll never know because this investigation's crap. And that's the way I felt at the time, immediately after watching the documentary. Before I started digging into documents and all that sort of stuff, I now have basically the same opinion that it's going to be hard to prove Stephen Avery was, given a raw deal, because the system is committed to perpetuating the lie. And that's kind of the scary part of it. But it was seeing what was going on and Making a Murderer, being pissed off that if he is, because like I said, in that mindset I was in, I was like, if he is guilty, I'm pissed off that these guys messed this up and made this so questionable. If he actually did it, why would they have polluted this case so much if he actually did this and jeopardized the conviction? So I was looking at it that way. And then I was like, but what if he didn't do it? What if it's just like before? What if it's the same thing again? And look at all the little coincidences involved. I mean, it's really difficult to believe those are harmless. And then I started digging into the documents and seeing more dirt and seeing kind of more and more, as you've been reporting lately, the details of the Ken Kratz sexting scandal and all that sort of stuff, and just going, this is like just a total shit show in Wisconsin. Like, I mean, what is going on here? And then we have recently Len Kaczynski. That guy was harassing a court clerk. He was utterly, completely harassing this girl. And, dude, coming in and staring at her for 45 minutes with a little cat toy going meow, meow, meow. Can you imagine how uncomfortable of a 45 minutes that would have been? I mean, and then to find out he gets let off with, it should have been 6 months, gets no jail time, and they're already lining up public defender cases for him. And it's just like, what's wrong here? You're talking about how that kind of disturbing behavior proves that Stephen Avery is guilty, and yet here, when you see it displayed by Len Kaczynski or somebody involved in the legal system there, it's a little pat on the wrist.
Mm-hmm.
So that's some of the disturbing factors. Those are just a couple of the ones that jumped up at this moment in time. There are countless others. Those of you who haven't, go over and check out the podcast 80 More Things by Fenn and Julie. At any given time, you'll ask me about this case, and I guarantee you 3 or 4 different things than you heard last time will probably pop up. So that's just how much it goes on and on with this case.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I made a couple of notes as you were speaking there. First of all, yes, the Green Bay Packers. I've actually done a bit of research on this. They are actually the most popular team here in the UK, which is a shame that they've never come to London to play. Most of the other franchised teams have actually come to London to play a game in London.
Yeah.
The Packers would never do that because they are a club who are basically for the people.
Yeah.
And
they're owned by the
people.
Residents of Wisconsin.
Yes, yeah. And also, as you say, Brett Favre, very well known, made that appearance in the There's Something About Mary, which was a great film, obviously. So yes, the most people in the UK have heard of the Packers and like the Packers because of the fact that they, just because of the fact that what they stand for. Green Bay is not one of the huge big cities. It's not full of. I don't know if you're familiar with the term over here, but we had a situation where Roy Keane, the Manchester United captain and player a few years back, criticised his own supporters as being the prawn sandwich brigade, and I mentioned that comment to Charlie Berens, and he said, "Don't worry, there's no worry of that ever happening with Green Bay." But he does know some of the American football teams that are a little bit of the prawn sandwich brigade, the supporters. Also, what I was going to say was that, of course, I know for a fact that you're very interested in the Scott Davis case, and as long as my geography
actually, I have an interesting thing to say, but go ahead.
Isn't as bad as yours. I'm sure my geography isn't quite as bad as yours. I reckon Scott Davis case is not based in Wisconsin.
No.
Where it's Georgia, I believe.
Georgia, yeah.
Georgia, which of course is the down in the south.
Yes.
That's
where Atlanta is. Atlanta, Georgia, down.
Yeah, our good friend Chad Keller is from Georgia, isn't he?
Yes.
And
So what's interesting about the Scott Davis case recently? I just wanted to say thank you to everybody out there, because right now, for whatever reason, that video is coming in at the 7th most watched video on my channel at this current point in time. That's right underneath my interview with FBI agent
Steve
Moore on my channel, right? So it's literally one notch below that. So that, to me, I was like, oh wow, a Scott Davis video. That, and it's an older one. It's the one Megan. It's what I say. She's a very
devious.
It's whatever I said about her. Whatever it was. She's disingenuous or whatever it was. But it's one of my older ones. Probably like one of the first 2 or 3 I made. Mm-hmm. But to see it getting those views, and especially that one, because that one goes into all the devious crap that she was doing, talking about the phone calls, that proved that she was the one that had the knowledge that Scott had been shot while his body was in a burning house. I mean, the logical logistics of this situation show us that there's more to this story, but Atlanta PD and everybody else ignored that and plowed forward with crap. And the DA eventually realized that. He realized that they'd screwed it up, and that's why he dropped the charges back in '96. But then a new assistant district attorney comes in 2003, 2000, but the end of 2002 and then 2003 or whatever, starts digging through cold case files. And, I'm not going to say nothing, but suddenly takes an interest in this cold case that involves this rich, victim, who comes from a very wealthy family. And I can't help but wonder, was her motivation for rekindling all of this with this particular case, was it a desire for her to curry favor with a very influential and powerful family? I don't know, because the evidence is sketchy. It's a completely circumstantial case. You can see that in the way that it's argued. Just read the closing arguments on this thing, and you can see how they're constantly tap dancing around and trying to insinuate things. They misrepresent things. At trial, they were able to misrepresent it that Scott had fed Megan the information through a phone call. But later on, the evidence was developed better, and we now know that it was Megan that called Scott, and that there were people standing next to Megan and heard her convey the information and say that David had been shot. So when you have David's own friend telling you he heard her say it to Scott on the phone, this is a problem. So it's like I said, this ADA, her name is Sheila, what's her last name? It's been a while since I was thinking about her. But anyway, she's the assistant district attorney there in Fulton County. Sheila Rost. There it is. Sheila Rost. She took over. She brought this case up out of the cold case files, and she went after Scott. She didn't. I mean, why nobody thought, what's going on with this phone call about David being shot at 12:18, or approximately between 12:15 and 12:30? What's the story with this? This seems like a very critical point. Nobody ever thought that. In fact, when you see that the prosecution ignored the blood that they believed was the killer's, never even put it through CODIS, ignored the prints that were on the burned Porsche, never even put that through APHIS, and you think of all the things they were ignoring, and then you have on top of that ignoring Megan's knowledge of David being shot in the head while his body was in a burning house. And it's like, I'm just happy to see that video was trending so strongly right now, being just below my interview with Steve Moore. So thank you, everybody, for that, because the Scott Davis case is, I feel for him right now, because the recent denial was a real kick in the teeth for them. They've developed all this evidence. They have one of the detectives in the case who is coming forward and saying, yes, there were 2 tapes and 2 transcripts. The Fulton County DA's office has been lying all of this time, saying that there's only 1 set. And the reason why that's important is because Scott has been saying all along that he said things, and there were things talked about in the interview room that aren't on the tape that made it to trial. And so his whole point in bringing this out is to say, I want the other tape that has the things that I've been saying happened on it, so that's where it is. And I kind of went on about it here a little bit, folks, but I kind of wanted to, because I'm feeling for them in that camp right now. Kind of like I felt for Brendan when he got denied by the on bank. And the kick in the teeth that was, I have a very similar pit in my stomach for the Scott Davis camp at this time, but hopefully with time and with some developments that may change.
Yeah, I suppose that's a good way to move on to the next thing, is the fact that maybe if there was more media coverage of Scott Davis, I'm aware of 1 or 2 programs about it, but it's not as if we've got a situation like we have in Nina, where the killing of Michael Funk is actually going to be covered by a new either film or documentary, which is the next stage to trying to...
Docudrama, actually.
Yeah.
Make sure you get that straight for your interviews. They'll, otherwise they'll correct you.
Yeah. So
learn from the American.
Cheap shot, but hey, you can have that one. as he choked on his doctor.
And I'm just letting you know, I called it a documentary, and David Starr was quick to say, well, it's actually a docudrama. And so I figured you can avoid that misstep.
Oh, okay. Thank you. You are so kind. You are so kind. So yes, the next step with so many of these wrongful convictions is to look at, to talk about the case, and then hopefully if somebody says, hold on a second, this is worth actually looking at in greater detail, then things start to happen. I suppose one does have to accept that when it comes to making a murderer, there is so much interest in the case because we Making a Murderer has presented 20 hours worth of stuff for us to watch, and I'm sure you're like me. You'll sometimes go through past episodes of Making a Murderer and pick up on things that you hadn't even thought about at the time.
Yeah.
That little connections are made, aren't there?
Mm-hmm.
And you think, so that's what that was all about.
Right.
I suppose here in the UK, now you have shown an interest, obviously, in the Luke Mitchell case, which is very interesting, very sort of ongoing. It's something that we're going to look into. But yes, I would openly accept that for me, Making a Murderer certainly has opened my eyes and mind to the idea that there are these wrongful convictions out there. I think Millbilly mentioned the Michael Bell case. That's another one that you've covered, haven't you?
The Michael Bell side, the Michael Bell case I've also covered.
Yeah.
And by the way, folks, it's one thing about the $50 million bullet here, real quick, so that we don't forget. The weekend of the 19th, or basically the 17th to the 19th, go to Eagle Nation Cycles. There will be an event there. It's like a press event kind of thing. They're still open for roles of extras for filming next summer, so you can go down there and inquire about that and possibly be an extra when they're filming next summer and stuff like that. But we would like to get as much support down there that day as possible, so that there's a lot of attention on it, and people can get the idea that it's serious business. So as many people showing up there as possible is what we're really hoping for. So if you can help us out with that, thank you very much. Please do. Remember, that's the weekend, I believe, 17th to the 19th. And the exact date, I believe, is the 19th itself, the day this will happen. So
one of the interesting things that I've actually kind of admitted to that maybe I could have done more about was during my conversations with Sheriff Herman, I never actually mentioned the Ricky Hochstetler case.
Mm-hmm.
During phone conversations. I did mention it in emails that I sent to him, but he never commented. But again, that's another example of there's no dubiety here.
Mm-hmm.
Debbie Hochstetler was told that don't worry, we'll get the whatever it was, the DOJ or the Department of Transport investigators to look at this. By Lenk, was it Lenk that told her?
Well, they said DCI would.
Right, DCI
would look into, or that they. Well, actually, what Lenk told her is that DCI said there was nothing they could do.
Right.
And then when she eventually calls DCI about this case, she finds out that they have never been contacted at all about Ricky's case until she called right now. And I mean, at that moment when she had called. So like at that point, she realized, okay, well, Lenk obviously never spoke to them and he lied to me. She puts that together by the fact that DCI is telling her that they've never been contacted regarding that case. So she puts that together. We realize, oh, there's Lenk lying to the mother of a victim. Am I shocked? No, I'm not. I'm really not. I mean, we all know he's been, he's in dirty dealings in Making a Murderer. So it really doesn't surprise me that he could somehow find the gumption to lie to a victim mother of a victim. I mean,
Yeah.
look at what hey, look, folks, they don't care. They're so desperate to keep their little rickety, boat afloat right now that they went ahead and said publicly that they gave the grieving family animal bones just to avoid a potential due process violation. So you tell me how much they care about the victims and the victims' families, especially when they allowed they didn't take care of Gregory Allen, and he was harassing Penny Bernson for some time. Okay, they allowed her to continue to be harassed by the same guy who had brutally attacked her on the beach that day. They allowed that to continue and pretended they cared about her, and what they were doing was in her name and because it was what was right for her, when they knew that that was BS. So they have sacrificed all credibility. I mean, Manitowoc has no credibility. None. I'm sorry, there may be a new generation of Manitowoc County Sheriff's officers there, but they're still being led. It's still coming down from the top of people who were present back when all this crap was going on. So if it was allowed then and everybody was looking the other way then and everybody's holding the line now, then that corruption is still there. And so
I think that's interesting. We might expand on it in a bit more detail, but certainly what I'm discovering about the Wisconsin DOJ looking into the Ken Kratz is that you had two sides of that department. One that was quite happy for it all to be hush-hushed.
Yeah.
And clearly at one point, somebody, possibly Kevin Potter or others, JB Van Hollen himself, decided, no, enough's enough. It's time that we brought this sicko down, down.
You get the feeling, you get the feeling that they, with each new email that he sent, where he was, being pushy, questioning them about their what they think their authority is, and all those things, you get this impression that they slowly went from being indifferent to being like, you know what, this guy's a freaking nutcase. Yeah. We need to do something about this guy. He is a powder keg waiting to go off. It's better that we take care of this now in a way where we're in front of it instead of waiting for it to blow up all over us. That could be the attitude they chose to take. And then that's why information gets leaked to a Mr. Ryan Foley.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the big eye-opener was the fact that, and fair dues, in the Luke Mitchell case, it appears that the press did not cover themselves in glory in the way that they handled this Luke Mitchell Jody Jones case, and certainly not in Wisconsin, where the majority of the journalists there seem to be on the payroll of the state and are simply propaganda merchants. They simply want to put forward what the state has to say. I mean, there aren't many. There's not many John Farracks around, are there?
There's less and less.
And he was certainly somebody that looked into the Ricky Hochstetler case in some detail.
Right.
But there does seem to be a shortage of people that look at. I mean, a classic example, Mike Holbach. Did the press ever go to the police and say, you need to listen to this? This is a huge red flag. Imagine if if instead of Teresa Holbach went missing, let's imagine it was Barb that went missing. Right. And Stephen Avery in an interview said, "Oh, well, she's still a missing person." Imagine Steve Avery had said, "Oh, well, the grieving process could last days, weeks, years."
Right.
What would have happened?
They would have immediately, they would have immediately have hung him and crucified him on that statement.
Exactly. So, people sometimes go on to me and say, "Oh, well, you have to give him a bit of leeway because blah blah blah." Why? if the roles were reversed, it would be Stephen Avery that was being harangued by the press. But There was something else I was going to point out. Yes. When I went to Amsterdam, I was lucky enough to have my question answered as the first question answered by Jerry Buting and David Rudolph. And I think you know what that question was. Or would you like me to remind you?
Yeah, remind me. I think I remember what it was, but I'm not sure.
The question was simply this. Because obviously you've got David Rudolph from The Staircase, Jerry Buting from Making a Murderer. Who is the more unethical, in other words, the worst prosecutor? Jim Harding or Kenneth Kratz?
Right.
No. I admired.
Has Ken Kratz ever dug up a dead body 4 states away and drove it on down the highway to the jurisdiction where he had control of the coroner? Has he ever done? I don't know. If he's never done that, then it's a pretty close race.
Yeah,
just because of that.
It was for me. The big problem is the fact that.
But they're both pretty bad.
Yeah, when we look at Ken Kratz, I know, but I was shocked when I saw Making a Murderer. And
by the way, did you see that the welcome mat from the video I did earlier today that Winston brings in at the end where it says "Home Sweat Home"? I was thinking, that would be a perfect housewarming gift for the Kratzes right there. We gotta think of, anyway. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, it's just the fact that if it was Ken Kratz and he was a, inverted commas, normal prosecutor that was saying these things and carrying on the way he did, the press conference, the clearly getting, we're discovering more and more about the link between Kaczynski and Kratz. That they were working together along with O'Kelly. We've even got emails looking at, for example, Ken Kratz trying to threaten the attorney for Jodie because she didn't want Wiegert and Fassbender talking to her. It's bad enough if a normal attorney had done that, but it makes more sense the way that he was when you look at the whole of the sexting scandal. When he would have you believe that it was to do with the fact that he was on these drugs, and it was simply something that happened just a couple of months in 2009. That only happened in September 2009. It was a one-off.
I would argue that all of those desires to dominate and do all the things that he did, that they are there. And obviously those drugs loosened his control and allowed him to act them out. So he can say it's the drugs. I say, no, it's you, but the drugs weakened your inhibitions and allowed you to somehow believe that it was acceptable for you to do that.
Well, I hold on a sec. I think that when we look at the OLR decision, Supreme Court decision, he claims that he was on all these drugs. He has provided no evidence whatsoever that he was ever on. And yet, what we do have one of his victims.
So many lawyers like him are, but
but one of his victims admitting that she was addicted to prescription drugs.
Yeah. No doubt. I mean, he was representing some people that were not necessarily the upper crust. The some of the crime. You're dealing with situations with battered women where they're trying to get away from abusive, boyfriends and or husbands, and that sort of thing. And a lot of Wisconsin is low income, and so therefore that generally can tend to lead to a kind of a more lowbrow situation where things aren't as eloquent as they would be in the upper crust. You know what I mean? I don't know, but so they're dealing with people that probably live in apartments or trailers, or they're struggling to get by as it is. They have a great deal of stress in their lives, and so then they got to fighting and things blew up or whatever, and then it got violent, then it got serious. That's when the state had to get involved, and that's probably what we're dealing with a couple of these girls that King Kratz tried to victimize, because the threat was he could just let it go, and then those girls would then, after seeking to do something about the abusive person in their life, would suddenly be left flat and with nowhere to go. And that was a scary prospect. So that's why him acting the way he did was so bad. And I loved the way he got chastised by the Wisconsin District Attorneys Association, where they were like, you took information we gave you, and you contacted this girl for your own self-gain. Mm-hmm. You have caused, who knows if any other victims will now come forward and give us that information to help them in the future, thanks to you. Mm-hmm. Dingus, you're an idiot. I'm paraphrasing, but dude, that's what they're basically telling him. They're just like, you abused confidential information. You're anyway. And he's just like, it doesn't faze him. He's like, nope, no, it's not like that. It's, whatever. And he'll just argue, spin. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I would maintain Fox chicken eyes. But anyway, listen. What I did mean to ask you was that obviously on your Doctor Who channel, you've done a little bit about a brilliant Scottish comedy TV series called Still Game, and it is a brilliant comedy series. And every year people go along and they have a live Still Game. Yeah, they actually do it at the this SSEC or whatever it is. It's the big conference centre in Glasgow, and it's very, very popular, obviously. Another one well worth watching besides Still Game would of course be Rab C. Nesbitt.
Right.
But you're on about what was the fellow's name? Batchy. Yeah.
Batchy is a Scottish YouTuber. He's about 95,000 subscribers. He was in a race with somebody to get to 100,000. Anyway, he's a pretty popular guy. He's pretty funny. He's got, it's all about the patter. Patter. The way the Scots say it, because like when you got two T's in the middle of the word, you don't say them. You hiccup instead. So, anyways, I'm just kidding, but you know what I mean, right? You know what I'm saying, though, right? Yeah, so, anyways, it's all about that with Batchy, and so that's why he gets into Still Game, because Jack and Victor are the two main characters, and even some of the peripheral buddies that hang around, there in Craigline are really, really funny. There's a lot of just verbal sparring back and forth, kind of stuff that's really, really funny. It's a great show. So my bone to pick with Batchy was that he had said we had nothing in America. He kind of was saying everything was like, oh, let's have a party. And like everything was unrealistic or whatever. I was like, oh, I have a bone to pick with that, because Married with Children is for me probably one of the greatest shows of all time. And I mean, it's like, and it is one of the greatest shows of all time, because it was ahead of its time. It took an approach that no show really previously had taken. It was taking a rather, less than flattering look at the lifestyle of the middle American class family, and or maybe even into the lower middle class. American middle class family, but it was doing it in a kind of an honest way, but in a way that was still humorous, and that could be appreciated. And it was completely different, and it was brilliant. I think it ran for 11 seasons. I mean, the first 9 seasons were the best. The final 2 seasons were just, it was in its dying throes, and every episode was a gimmick. but it was still had its moments. It was still funny. But the first 9 seasons, though, I mean, were just brilliant. I mean, even as the neighbors changed, as Steve left and Jefferson comes in, and all those sort of things. I mean, it was just a great show. And so I had this bone to pick with them. I'm like, well, it's just as irreverent as the humor in your patter. You know what I mean? It's like, and so I felt I had to call it to his attention. So there you go.
Yeah, I think
touchdowns in one game. Sharon says yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, I watched that program, and yes, maybe to a certain extent, some of these programs, I suppose they should learn from Fawlty Towers. If you've only ever done, what was it in Fawlty Towers? There's only ever nine of them ever done.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was like one series, wasn't there? That was it. That was it.
Sure.
Yeah. You don't get any more. So sometimes it's a good idea to not to keep flogging something. What I was going to ask though was the fact that America is made up of 50 states. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. With your knowledge of geography.
Oh, here we go.
Okay. And I'm gonna give you 2 minutes because I'm gonna nip to the little room, and when I come back, I want an answer to these 2 questions. Okay. And these 2 questions are: 1, Wisconsin and Scotland, which is the bigger population, and which is the bigger surface area? Now you've got the 2 minutes it takes me to come back to everybody to give him the answer, or if he can't figure it out himself. I mean, 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
All in the Family. Yeah, actually, you know what? All in the Family was another one. That's a good point, Rhonda. That's actually another one. Oh, Scooby was saying All in the Family as well. Yeah. Dr. Pepper time. Yeah. Well, I don't know the populations, and I don't know the square footage of each one, and I'm not about to look it up.
All I can say to Gabriel McGrath, you're the lucky one. Finally made the live. Now there is silent. You are so lucky. Can I have a guess? Have a
So
guess.
Wisconsin has more people.
Yes. By how many?
I don't know.
Well, Scotland is 5.
I took the over. What do you want?
Yeah, Scotland is 5.4 million, whereas Wisconsin is 5.8 million.
Wow.
And which is the bigger surface area?
Oh.
Physically, which is the bigger country?
I know what the
Stick a chorizo in it. What is it you
said?
I
don't know. I'm going to say...
What's with that zucchini thing you keep sending me?
What do you mean, the eggplant?
Is that what it is?
It's because you're a Bobby. Anyway. So I'm going to say Scotland's bigger. Surface-wise.
It's less than half the size of Wisconsin.
Wow.
Yeah. In fact, if you want the figures, I'll say it's 5.4 million for Scotland, 5.8 million for Wisconsin. Scotland is 31,000 square miles. Wisconsin is 65.5 thousand square miles. The point obviously I'm trying to make is the fact that here in Scotland, you have a program like Still Game.
Yeah.
Everybody relates to that. It's just,
Right.
Everybody loves it because it's to do with people.
Right. Yes. Right there. Yeah.
You can.
I mean, Craigline is a fictional place in Glasgow,
but everybody relates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's still Glasgow. So
exactly. It's the same as Charlie Berens. It's everybody in Wisconsin, or a lot of people will relate to Charlie Berens. Maybe not everybody, but a lot of people will relate to that. And I think, in fairness, when it comes to some of the, dare I say it, the people that have got a more cosmopolitan point of view when they're making up their series, such as you say, Married with Children. It's they are sort of, shall we say, pampering to a wider audience. I mean,
they were cashing in on a I think on a public that was tired of BS. They were tired of having everybody saying everything's okay, it's all okay, don't worry about it. And Married with Children just seemed honest. Somebody else brought up another one, by the way, All in the Family, actually back in the 70s. All in the Family, another one that was just very similar to the way Married with Children was, because it was taking a very, very honest look at, like I said, middle to lower middle class American family, putting that funny spin on some of the tragic nature of, being, not among the haves, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely say that one of the most famous comedy programs of all time was actually set in Wisconsin. Happy Days.
Yeah. Yep.
That's why they've got that figure of the Fonz, haven't they? Is Milwaukee?
I believe that's what it was, Milwaukee. Yeah.
I understood that the actual diner was actually in Kenosha.
It could be. I don't know. I don't know that much about it, honestly.
But I mean,
I know that the term "jump the shark" comes from that TV show, because literally they say the moment that Fonzie jumped the shark in a lake on skis, that was the moment that Happy Days had hit its peak and started its downward trend. And so that's like how they measure, like, now every show, when a show jumps the shark. And so they try to track when a show is declining. But they use that term now strictly because of Happy Days. It's coined from that scene of Fonzie jumping the shark. Because you get it. I mean, the problems with it, a shark, a freshwater lake, really? I mean, you know what I mean? So anyways, it just was so ridiculous and gimmicky that it was like the beginning of the end.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's very easy, isn't it, to look at stuff that we're familiar with and not look back very far. But for me, the comedy genius number one for me has always been Laurel and Hardy.
Mm-hmm.
I think they.
I think they're funny. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've watched them, but they are. Yeah.
And then if you want sheer wit, Phil Silver's in Sergeant Bilko.
I haven't seen it.
You are seriously missing out.
Yeah.
What I would agree with you there is something that I have mentioned before. For us in Scotland, sarcasm, taking the piss, it's our national sport. It's what we do all the time. You know that to be the truth, because that's basically what we have been doing back and forth for how many years now.
Mm-hmm.
It's
gotten to the point of being years now. Wow. Time flies when the havering is abound. Anyway, no. Yeah, I was saying that yeah, it does. It's, as you say, it's like the national pastime, and that's the Scots have a thicker skin. It takes more it takes more to kind of get under your guys' skin because you're all constantly just already, taking the piss out of each other. So it's like by default, you guys have a thicker skin about it, and you don't get set off or upset by more the more trivial things. Not to say that you guys don't get upset or pissed off. Obviously, we all do, but I'm just saying on a peripheral level, you guys have a much thicker skin, I think, because you guys are just conditioning yourselves on a daily basis, being Scottish, and acting, and just, poking at people, prodding at people, and taking the piss. So,
yeah. The other thing is that if, for example, you could within Scotland, if you were from one town and you were, say, in a bar and your mates were taking the mick out of you for something, if somebody, say, from another town, if they started taking the mick out of you, all your mates from your town would immediately join in. There's a camaraderie there. I mean, here's an interesting thing. The latest Manitowoc Minute was Manitowoc is the worst city in Wisconsin.
Have you ever been to Beloit?
Yeah, unless you drove me through there. No, I
don't think so. Me either. No, I just had to say it because I watched the video. Anyway, sorry.
And what's wrong with Beloit?
No, in the comment section, people were like, "Oh, what's so wrong?" No, have you ever been to Beloit?
Right.
Yeah. Anyway,
but
it was just a little ongoing joke, and his.
Yeah. I mean, but the point is that here in the UK, a while back, we had the 50 worst places to live in the UK, and one of them was 20 miles down the road in Hawick.
Hawick,
which is spelled Hawick.
Yeah.
Hawick. But it's pronounced Hawick.
And where did the two twats come in?
Well, there's definitely one in Shetland. There's one in Shetland. I've sent you the A to Z of Shetland, and that's
only in Scotland can you have two places.
Yeah, that's right. But the point is that when Hawick was voted one of the worst places to live in Scotland, in the UK, there's no doubt that people from like Melrose and Gala and Selkirk and Jedburgh, they would have all have agreed with, they would have all have voted for Hawick because it's one of these ongoing jokes here in the borders. But see if there was a load of people from the borders down south and somebody was to start picking on the Hawick guy, everybody else would rally around them. Right. Yes, there's this take the mick out of them, and yes, it's almost.
Right. It's like what you are with your brothers.
Yeah.
You can talk shit on them. You can give them noogies. You can, but somebody else does it, then that ain't happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's almost like when when I remember as a kid, when a girl was maybe give me the odd comment, I would take that as a word of endearment because it meant that they actually liked you. The fact that they would make a comment towards you,
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's what it's. I'm sure that's partly what it is. As for Manitowoc being the worst city in Wisconsin, I can't help thinking that yes, some of it is to do with the fact that there was one brilliant comment, and it was that, well, if I ever want to be made a murderer, I know where I'm going to go.
I commented on his video, and I basically kind of was like, hey, Charlie, I go, unfortunately, Manitowoc is going to be a great embarrassment to your state. I go, and Nina's lining up to be second. So, I would love for Charlie to really take a look at some of the issues. I mean, I know he's somewhat aware of the situation with making a murderer. But I think he is, like a lot of people there, probably just wants to keep the blinders on. That's truly what I feel, and I don't hold it against him. I still like Charlie, but that's I think where he stands.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think as well. Unlike some people, he admits the fact that he hasn't. He doesn't know much about the case. He's only watched what everybody else has, and one wonders if he's even watched all 20 episodes of Making a Murderer. You know, it's.
I don't know if he's checked out season 2. Yeah,
exactly.
You would think if he did, he would have come up with another funny bit. Because I'll be honest, the comedy skit that he did with whoever he made that with the making a husband. Yeah, I mean, that was freaking brilliant. That was freaking hilarious. And having the experts analyzing what was being said, like in the background of while it's all happening. Oh my God, that thing was brilliant. You know, every time she says "hun," what she really means is "bitch." So it's like she's like, "Okay, hun. So do you understand that now, hun?" So it's like he's like, "Oh, basically what she just said was like, bitch. Do you understand now, bitch?" That video is hilarious. So, but he clearly understood what was going on with Brendan's confession, or somebody did, whoever wrote that. And maybe he's just an actor that got brought on board and he didn't have to do much thinking. But
yeah, can I just quickly do a little bit of this? I don't know if everybody can see that.
Ah, there it is.
Hold on a sec. There we go.
Keep it moving.
You see what it says? It says to Paul on the squeeze box.
Keep it moving. Yeah.
And then it's got, and I can hardly see what it's. It must be on this.
On the other side where he signed it there, you mean?
Yeah, I'm trying to get it to so that it lines up. I can't get it to. Yeah, he signed it, Charlie. Yeah, there you go.
Go Packers and F the Bears.
And that's one of my prized possessions. That's Charlie Bones of the Manitowoc Minute, and I'm sure you realise that the state flag here is not the official Wisconsin state flag.
Mm-hmm. That's Charlie's version. Yes.
I've never been to see Charlie Bones. I do want to. In fact, what I would really like to do would be to see him come to Scotland sometime, to come to the Edinburgh Festival, because the Edinburgh Festival, of course, is actually the biggest in the world when it comes to people appearing in theatres, all that kind of stuff. I think even over there in Crunch Island, they've heard of the Edinburgh Festival. No?
You keep saying over there. Anyway.
Oh dear. So anyway, what I've also put down, of course, Charlie Chaplin was one of the first. Also, one of the things that I can't remember, were you recording when I first mentioned it? The latest Netflix film is My Name is Dolomite. Absolutely brilliant. Well worth a watch. I thought it was very interesting when he goes to, him and a few mates, they go to the cinema and they watch a film, and they're the only black guys in the audience. And the white sense of humor, they do not get at all. They're saying,
right,
is this funny? And at the same time, and then later on in the film, when they've produced their film, and people are going, is this
different
serious?
Strokes for different folks?
Exactly, So what I would also point out is that when it comes to probably, we're talking about Lon and Hardy, Charlie Chaplin. For me, one of the greatest comedies of all time, comedy films, is probably our favourite, The Big Lebowski. Mm-hmm. Where I do think that sometimes I do get a little bit annoyed with America is when they start taking stuff like Tom Hanks did his version of The Lady Killers, which was a classic Ealing comedy. Never are you going to be able to replicate something as good as the original version that had Alec Guinness.
I agree with you 100%. Hollywood has gotten extremely lazy. It's ridiculous at this point. They don't seem to want to make anything original. Everything is a remake of older movies. I mean, how many times have they remade Batman now? How many times have they remade Ghostbusters? I mean, some things are going on their third and fourth remake now, especially when it comes to comic book movies, about comic book heroes and stuff like that. And I mean, it's just getting so ridiculous where Hollywood is basically saying, we don't want to worry about original content. We know this subject matter will draw people and put their butts in seats. So that's what we'll do.
Yeah. So, yes, you're absolutely right, Sharon Sunshine. Peter Sellers and the other one, Herbert Lom.
Peter Sellers is great. I love him.
Yeah. Well,
he is absolutely brilliant in Dr. Strangelove, How I Stopped Worrying and Learned to Love the Bomb. He plays 3 different roles in it, and he's brilliant.
Well, you should watch the original Lady Killers, but also things like the Americans.
I also wanted to say W.C. Fields, now that you brought up Peter Sellers.
Yeah.
W.C. Fields, one of my dad's favorites, and I love W.C. Fields. Very funny comedian. But.
No, it was just that the Americans have done their version of things like The Italian Job and Get Carter.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's as you say, I suppose in a way it can be quite tricky for them to try and strike the balance between, if they felt that a certain series of films that there weren't enough of them, like I was saying, there was only 9 Fawlty Towers. I'm sure that some people would be sort of saying, they sure they could have done more, but it's I suppose how far do you milk it is would be my question. For me, something like The Big Lebowski, it was just a complete one-off. I mean, the storyline is.
I thought I heard something about their maybe working on a sequel for it now or something possibly. I thought I heard. I could be wrong, but I thought I heard maybe something like that.
Well, I mean, but the thing is, it's a little bit like, I remember the very first gig I ever did, and I got a right telling off of my Uncle Chris. He's the keyboard player in the Fortunes back in the 60s. And it was him that actually came to pick me up from the gig. And the gig was supposed to finish at midnight, and I went on for another 20 minutes. And Chris, my Uncle Chris was quite firm with me. He said, "Look, Paul, whatever you do, don't if it's whatever time it finishes, finish. If they want you back for more, if they're shouting more and all this kind of stuff, tell them fine. I'll do. I'm the next. If you want me back, I'll come back. But that's when you get the more. It's not now, sort of thing.
Right. Oh, okay. Right.
If
it puts a more definitive value on your playing, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Listen, dude, I've kept you long enough, and it's getting
all right. Yeah.
To midnight here. We've just done over the hour.
Been well over an hour actually, because I started recording before you started broadcasting. So, but yes, it's been a bit. I think we've covered everything aptly, though.
Yeah. As I say, I think we can look forward. I think to this $50 million bullet. I'm looking forward to seeing that. My hope is for it to be popular enough that we get everybody to have the Wisconsin again moment.
Yeah, that's what we really want. That's what I'm really hoping for with $50 million bullet. So that's why I want to make sure it's a success. That's why I want to promote it. That's why I want to have as many of us helping to support it and everything, particularly going out there on the weekend of the 18th and 19th. To Eagle Nation Cycles, because they're going to be having a press day there. So help out with things like that. But like I said, I can't say it enough. I believe if we can get a lot of people who have watched Making a Murderer, but never maybe got into the documents, never went in further like a lot of us have, if they come back and see the $50 million bullet and have the Wisconsin again moment, that could change things. And that could bring a lot more interest, and the kind of interest that won't be fleeting, okay, as it sometimes is right now. Because obviously, right after MAM1 came out, we had a huge amount of interest, but that bled off. And then MAM2 came out, and we had a resurgence of interest, and that's kind of, again, has kind of bled off. And so now we wait for the filings, and then it gets interesting every time something interesting happens. Every time we have some jack-off in prison claiming that he committed the murder, talking about how he was popping pills and swigging brandy while he was doing it, all undetected on the Avery property somehow. Anyway, so, all these different developments we get, whether they be ridiculous or whether they be court filings that should be taken seriously. But anyways, okay, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I think you're right. The only thing I would say about Making a Murderer, it is unique. It's the story itself is unique. The story of Stephen Avery, but also the fact that you've got those 20 hours worth of documentary to get through, and that in itself is pretty unique. Even The Staircase only runs to 13 episodes, and apparently Fawlty Towers is 12 episodes. So it's still a very, very short season, series of episodes of Fawlty Towers. As I said in one of my videos, it's not as if we wake up every morning thinking, today, now what can we do to further undermine local government in Wisconsin? That is not what we're thinking, is it? It's very much a case of what the hell
did you do to that 16-year-old kid?
Yeah.
And look at this, and look at what you did to his uncle previously. How am I supposed to be assured that didn't happen again?
Exactly. So I'm looking forward to hopefully having a chat with David Starr, Dan Davis, Julie, and Fenn, and also their next guest on 80 More Things is Mitch. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I've been in contact with Mitch, and so hopefully we'll get Mitch on at some point. Some point soon. The elusive Chad Keller is proving very elusive, although he has just, and I believe it's coming out on Monday. Tomorrow is the House of Mystery. He's been on there a couple of times, and on House of Mystery previously to do with the Avery case were Ken Kratz and Sean Reck just within the last week or so, as far as I can tell. Mm-hmm. So House of Mystery, well worth having a listen to. I think that's some guys over in Seattle. Is that right?
I'm not sure. Although I would say that one thing as we're going out here is that recently, folks, Mindshock did another video about the Avery case and stuff, and pointed out some very interesting and odd, bizarre things and connections in the history in Manitowoc there. So those who haven't gone and checked out Mindshock's most recent thing, maybe go over and check it out. I'm not saying it's anything case changing. Well, I'm not saying that there definitely is. All I'm saying is that there's some interesting bits of history thrown into that video. That's just I just find even if they end up being just trivia, I think are interesting. So you might want to go check that out.
Yes, Mitch comes under the name of Team Stockdale, but I'm sure he's on Twitter. I know he's on Twitter quite a lot.
Well, Stockdale is
Team Stockdale.
Team Stockdale. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That would be right. That would be on the way from where I was earlier this week in San Jose.
When you sailed down the coast on the Guppy, with a crew well behaved.
Uh-huh. You know, Crunchberry Vineyards is in Scotland, dude. I know you haver and you haver, but you know. Anyways,
it's a national sport.
I know, right?
Yeah.
The patter. It's the patter.
Well, you see, that's
hey, look, I'll put it this way: you guys never make a T sound as clearly as you do when you say shite. When you guys, any other word, it's like you almost try to remove the T sound. But when you say shite, that T comes ringing out like a church bell, man. You can completely hear that T. Anyways, I'm having some fun with you.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting thing. If you want to sound American,
yeah,
just pronounce the word water by changing the T to a D. Water. Nah.
You're going to start preaching to me about T-sound, huh? Okay.
I'm not going to perish the thought. The patter thing, that's to me, that's more of a Londoner thing. The Londoners tend to be very lazy. What you'll find in Scotland...
Well, I listen to Battered, and it's like anything with T's in the middle, it's like it's not a T sound, it's just like a sound. It's just like a, it's like an absence of the T sound. It's weird. Anyway.
No, I would definitely. I mean, for us, I suppose in Scotland, the various sort of dialects are huge to us, but obviously they would be to Americans. You can immediately recognise where somebody is from by the way you speak. I'm sure that a lot of people say, "Oh, you're from California,"
right? But a lot of people could probably tell that, yeah.
Yeah.
And somebody from Texas has a pretty distinctive Texas drawl.
Yeah.
Somebody who's say from the Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia's, basically southeast United States, they tend to have a pretty particular way of talking.
Yeah.
Obviously, as you move up you get to New England, you get to like Boston and Massachusetts.
Yeah.
That state, they have a complete like dialect. I don't know. It's almost like Scotland there, but they have a very unique accent, and they have a very they very much are very, very intensely care about their culture and folk and their history there in a way that I don't see with a lot of other places in the U.S., which I find interesting. So good on you, Bostonites. Obviously, and then you get up to New York, completely different accent from just those two places, which are really close to each other, really, but completely different accents in the way that people talk. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Yeah. And I know like people in Glasgow talk a little bit different than the people from Edinburgh. I know, and then as you get to the, outskirt cities or suburbs of these places, you probably even get some more interesting dialects. Obviously, you end up in Orkney, in the Orkneys or whatever, you probably even get some more interesting dialects, and as you move around Scotland. So, I mean, that would make sense because obviously that's the way it is everywhere. So,
yeah, you'll what you will find is you'll get the shall we say the sort of slightly posher parts of Glasgow and Edinburgh, where they do tend to be more articulate, and as you say, you'll tend to get people who their dialect is slightly lazy. For example, in here in Galashiels, I remember my wife, telling both daughters, do not speak like that, because you're just, you're given in effect saying, that I'm just a lazy talker by using the local slang words, which is fair enough.
Well, Badgie makes the argument that he feels that by doing that, talking that way, like with patter, the way he says patter, he feels that he's highlighting the word. I am not so sure I'm buying that line because I'm thinking highlight. I mean, you're removing part of the sound of the word of the way it sounds, and I agree with you. It sounds more like lazy than it than what Batchy says that he's highlighting. That if anything, it's highlighting. No, it's funny because and the reason why this subject comes up for Batchy is because obviously his accent is very thick, and so sometimes when he gets rolling and he gets to talking and he's getting kind of excited, holy moly! I literally had my girlfriend sitting behind me one time when he got on to a strong one where he was talking about something that he was really intense about, and he was just flowing and rolling, and it was coming out so quick, so fast, and so much. My girlfriend's like, "Can you even understand a word he's saying?" And I was like, I was following him, but I was having to really pay attention to him to really catch it all because he has a real deep accent. Sometimes it's just like, ooh. So
it's funny, isn't it? Because you remember me once saying about Mr. Richard Boyd. I've tried to watch some of his videos, and I cannot make out what he said. I honestly,
sometimes I can, sometimes I can't.
I listen for a minute, and I'm like, I'm lost, and it's like there's no point rewinding it. But one final question, I do like the accent of Nancy Grace. Where is she from?
She's from South Carolina,
Is
so that's like the Georgia, Southern Belle type of.
Did you ever watch Wacky Races? She reminds me of Penelope Pitstop.
Penelope Pitstop. Yeah, I used to watch that show when I was a kid with George of the Jungle and Tom Slick and all that. Anyway.
Probably not everything made its way across the act.
Maybe not everything, but
Crotch Island, so.
But it had Snidely in it, right? The dog.
Yes. Oh yeah. Muttley. I think
here it was Snively. I don't know. Anyway.
Oh right.
Or maybe I'm thinking of two different cartoons too. But anyway. What?
Oh no, dude! You are the expert when it comes to cartoons.
Okay, there. What was your favorite one? The Captain Pugwash, right?
Oh,
there you go.
Yeah. Brilliant.
That's Paul's Captain Crunch, folks. That's his, Oh yeah, Captain. All right. Well, it's been fun.
What I would say with Nancy Grace, I don't like what she says, but I love the way she says it.
Yeah, I gathered. Yeah, hey, look, the Southern Belle accent can be attractive, but so can a lot of things. I mean,
it's
honestly, anything for me that's not a Californian accent sounds different, right? Yeah. So it's like, I can, find it appealing. So.
Okay. Well, I've kept you long enough, and thank you for joining me. And
it's been fun.
Undoubtedly, we will send insults to and from one another over the next week or so, and maybe catch up again in the future.
Well, it looks like Scotland's trying to go for its independence again. There, man, it could get interesting.
Yeah, it will be, because honestly. Do we really want another? And 2016 we had the independence thing,
Yeah.
And people.
That's the question.
I just think that maybe it just needs that little bit more time to just because the Scottish Parliament has done some good things, and It might take a generation. I think the reason they lost the vote the last time was because concerns over things like defence and financial things. And once that generation are gone, I hate to say it, but they've grown old, they've moved on. You get new people coming on, fresh ideas that then
that are more open to the change. Right. That's what I'm saying, and I get that, but then again. honestly, I don't know if Scotland should leave the UK. I honestly don't know. That's an
Well,
answer I can't say. I wouldn't want to be offering a definitive opinion on, because I don't know that looks good for Scotland. I would want whatever it is to look good for Scotland. I would want it to be in favor of Scotland, so that Scotland's, so that it improves the way of life in Scotland and not the opposite. So when it comes down to it, I don't know. But what I see is that it's going to be forced because of the current climate going on in Westminster. I can't blame the Scots if they decide they're fed up with that crap and they decide they want to get out. I can't blame them. But I'm still not saying if it's right. If it's right for them to leave or wrong for them to leave. I'm just saying they're being pushed. And they're being told, oh, no, you're being ridiculous, and then being pushed and pushed and pushed. It's going to lead to a powder keg situation. I mean, as long as it's going to continue to be handled the way it's currently being handled, I don't know that the decision is going to end up getting made rationally. That's what I'm getting. That's the thing that is concerning me.
I don't know if this is a fair analogy or not, but if for example, Wisconsin suddenly decided they'd had enough of being part of the United States and decided to set themselves up as a separate country, and there was say 49-50% of the population of Wisconsin voted in favor of staying, and the same amount voted on leaving. My question there would be that Wisconsin leaving the United States would have an impact on the whole of the United States. So shouldn't the whole of the United States have a say in Wisconsin deciding that they want to become a separate country?
I don't know. I mean, I don't even know if we're arguing apples to apples and oranges to oranges. I'm not sure, but I don't
know if it's a fair analogy.
But I mean, here, I'll give you, I don't know, a rough answer off the top of my head. I mean, number one, we're 50 states. So honestly, losing Wisconsin means, maybe we might have to pay a few cents more per pound for cheese. I mean, it's like, it wouldn't be the end of the world. So I think it might be different in that way. Obviously, right now, the UK is very dependent on the oil off of the coast of Scotland. And so they don't want to see Scotland leave the Union. Or I'm sorry, not the Union. They don't want to see Scotland leave the UK because obviously those resources are important. So for me, there's a lot of thorny issues here that I don't know. Like I said, the careless government I see happening in Westminster at the moment is concerning. I don't give a damn what your political views are. If you're acting like a child and stamping out of the room because somebody you don't like what they have to say stood up, you're a child, and you're pissing in the face of democracy. Go. If you were going to throw a fit today, then you should never have bothered coming into the chamber. You know what I mean? It's like you're grown adults at this point. You listen to what the person has to say. You may not agree with it, but you listen to it, and you give that person the dignity of that is according to their position and that they have reached, because they are representing people within the kingdom. You know what I mean? Maybe not be a lot of people. I know Scotland has a very small population. We don't have to go over that. But the point is that they are representing some people. And so sit your ass down and listen. And then when they're done and it's whatever, then walk out. You don't have to do what they said, but you can sit there and listen to it. And basically that's the way I feel about it.
Yeah, I think I've just written it down
because it's just open disgrace, and I mean, I can't expect. I wouldn't want to put up with that kind of crap. I would find that offensive if it were me.
Yeah, what I would say though is that when it comes to this idea of independence, nobody knows what would happen. everybody can say, well, this would happen. And you know, forgive me for my skepticism, but do all politicians actually deliver what they say they're going to deliver once they're elected? I don't think so. So therefore,
That's a valid point. It's
you know, it's all well and good saying, you know, well, Scotland would be better off because we'd have all that oil money to ourselves, but nobody's litigated
in the short term
on who actually owns that oil. Is it the oil company that have actually drilled the oil out? I know for a fact that up in Shetland, for example, when I went there 6 years ago, I remember speaking to a councillor that was telling me that, you know, the Shetlanders, they've been very sensible. They have ring fenced oil revenue to the tune where they've got something like £1 billion put aside for, as they call it, a rainy day. You know, and that makes sense. But you know, we don't know. It's all in good politicians saying, well, you know, the financial situation would be that, but are people willing to risk it?
Yeah, I understand your concerns. I agree with you that people should question. People should look into the facts on this. They should make informed decisions about this. I believe qualified and competent economists should be brought in to comment on this and say, okay, yes, if it was to break up, the UK were to break up, you know, we did our inventory and this is the way we see it. Scotland would be in this situation. Britain and Ireland would be in this situation. This is kind of what it would look like, so that people could then look at it and decide and go, okay, what would be best? Would it work out better if it happened? If the separation happened, would Scotland be happier, and would Ireland and Britain be happier, and Wales be happier split up? Maybe they would, probably not, but maybe. I mean, let's bring in the qualified people to look at it and make those kinds of, you know, qualified, you know, observations and calculations and really see what it looks like and make informed decision about it, not just going off half-cocked because of some childish, even though it bothers me and I will not stop talking about it, but let's not go off half-cocked because of some childish politicians in Parliament.
It's a difficult one. I mean, the thing is, you've got the situation where the UK joined the European Union. I remember a while back we had a vote on good stuff on fresh from Manitoc's finest. You know, we had a vote on joining the euro, I believe, didn't we? I'm sure we did. I'm sure we had an election to decide whether we wanted to you know, get rid of the pound in favour of the euro. And that of course was not the case, you know. So look,
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Sharon, you've got these figures, but we don't know these things, do we? You know, it's you know, we just don't know what would happen, and that's why, as I say, you know, Britain joined the European Union, and now they've decided after, is it 40 years or more, that, you know, that it hasn't really been the wonderful thing that we thought it was going to be. I must admit, I'm a skeptic, right? I have yet to come across a politician that isn't in it for themselves.
And I agree with you. I mean, I'm not saying to trust your politicians either. That's not what I'm saying, but our politicians are there to represent a certain portion of the population and everything. And so for me, for the democratic process to work properly, for it to be respected, for people to have faith in it, right? I mean, the fundamentals of democracy and liberty and freedom are very delicate things, folks. I know we kind of grow up thinking like, who could ever question those things? But the problem is that sometimes things happen, and liberty is a very precious thing. But what liberty means, you got to understand what liberty is. It means in accepting a certain amount of responsibility as a citizen, and getting involved and not just sitting by and letting life happen to you or whatever, but getting involved and trying to make things better in your community and those sort of things, and being involved and taking an interest. That's what liberty's about, so that we can enjoy the freedom. What happens sometimes is we in societies, we will give up freedoms. We will, for somehow in some way, we will convince ourselves that a particular freedom is no longer as desirable as it once was, and so we will choose to give up the freedom to choose in an effort to feel safer. Okay? Government can't make you safer. I'm sorry. I mean, in certain ways they can, but by passing legislation or doing things like that and removing your own rights and your own liberties doesn't make you safer. Government doesn't make you safer by doing that. And these are the things that I care about. These are the things that bother me, because the principles of democracy and liberty and freedom are very important, and they can be perverted and corrupted by dirty politicians or questionable politicians, just as Paul is expressing his frustration with. Those three things are important. It's important that people understand them and care about them and what they mean. Freedom doesn't mean complete free-for-all freedom. No, it means we all have some responsibility and some part in the way that the machine works and how it comes together in the symphony. You know what I mean? We have to take an interest. That's the best way I can put it, is as being a citizen, you have to take some amount of responsibility to yourself to make the whole better. And so,
yeah, as I say, for me, what I think sometimes is a problem is that, and I can quite see it, that you've got a Scottish Parliament, you've got a UK Parliament, you've got a European Parliament, you've got all these levels of bureaucracy, and it would be nice if there was none of that, and it was local people taking care of local issues, and I think in that respect, yes, I would be the first to admit that here in the Borders we have benefited greatly by the SNP's decision to reintroduce the Borders Railway. It's been a huge success.
Right.
But yes, I think it's a case of let's see a track record of that kind of success, and then I think yes, at some point in the future there will be another independence referendum.
Yeah.
But I can't see it happening very soon. But I do wonder.
A lot has changed since the last one, and that's really the main factor. So, with great change is what is the catalyst for this referendum. Is the way it appears, anyway. I agree with you that it should take a little longer because not everybody's with it yet. But then again, like I said, the conduct in Parliament right now is just going to continue to create. It's going to take this conversation about Scottish independence, and it's just going to continue to rise. The conversation is just going to continue to rise and gain more popularity, and it's going to be to the point where it's being talked about by everyone. Okay, that's what the current situation in Parliament is going to do, because people are going to consider it, because it's disgraceful what's happening over there. Personally, I mean, seeing what are supposed to be grown, responsible men and women acting in that way is childish and shameful. And I can't blame the Scots if they decide they don't want to put up with it. If they have a vote and decide that it is just not acceptable, I can't fault them for that. I mean, those politicians that are acting that way right now should grow up. Grow up and stop fueling this fire. If you're worried Scotland's going to leave, grow up and stop fueling the fire. That's it. All right. I don't know. That's my best advice to the Tories.
Okay, listen, you go and enjoy your beer. Could we replicate a little bit of Two Ronnies?
A little bit of two runners.
Two Ronnies.
Two Ronnies.
Ronnie Corbett and Ronnie Barker. When they finished, the one guy, the big one of the fellows, always say, it's goodbye from me. So I want you to say, it's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him. Bye-bye.
Bye, folks. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe. We'll see you.
Cheers.